Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for checking in with us for your nightly 9 p.m. tropical weather update. I'm meteorologist Trevor Birchett here at KHOU 11 in Houston. We have been watching the tropics quite carefully for the last couple of days, especially last week when the Atlantic kind of flared up over a few days. We got our tropical storm Cristobal, and then we had a couple of other disturbances that we were watching, but El Nino has really taken care of those. It seems like everything's kind of fizzled out. We've gone back to a calm and quiet Atlantic basin. In fact, we are not tracking any chance of development in the next 7 days. Hurricane centers dropped everything back down to zero. There's just way too much wind shear out in the Caribbean right now. That's kind of what we were talking about last week. That even if those little disturbances, those waves were able to continue west into the Caribbean, they were going to be fighting an uphill battle because there was so much wind shear that was going to kind of prevent them from developing. And that is exactly what's happened. They're still out there. They're still producing some rain down in Hispaniola and Puerto Rico, but nothing that's going to be organizing into a tropical system. So that is some good news. Of course, we also have a lot of Saharan dust, and it looks like even some more coming in. This is another thing that hurricanes do not like. Hurricanes have a lot of trouble developing when there's a lot of Saharan dust. We've got that big Bermuda high out here. That is just pumping all of that dust, all the way across the ocean. Hard to believe, but when you get that strong upper level flow of that big high pressure ridge, it can easily pump that dust all across the ocean. So that is helping us right now. And of course, like we just saw, anything that was able to spin up once it got to the Caribbean very quickly fell apart because of all the wind shear that is out in the Caribbean. We'll talk about that here too. Showing you the wind shear. This is the wind really in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and there is a lot of it right now in the Caribbean, really all across the Atlantic. There's this one little lane right here that if something followed in there, it might be okay. That's what we were watching, a couple of storms, the little waves last week were following kind of right in there. But then they got here to the Lesser Antilles and encountered that wall of wind shear. Those little waves are moving east to west. And then look over here in the Caribbean, you've got all of this wind shear that's going west to east. So it's almost like a wall of wind up in the upper levels of the atmosphere that is really stopping any development. That is great news. Here in the Gulf, you see there's a lot of wind shear. So even if a little wave does make it this way, it's going to be encountering a lot of wind shear. And that's very typical for an El Nino year. You've heard us say a lot about this El Nino pattern we're in. One of the hallmarks of El Nino is wind shear in the Gulf, and it really lowers our hurricane activity. It's the opposite in the Pacific Ocean, though. El Nino can actually increase activity there. We'll show you that here in just a bit. But for right now, we are in a pattern that it looks like tropical storm or hurricane development in the Gulf or Caribbean is very unlikely. Let's hope it stays that way. That's the trend for at least the next 7 days. Of course, we are approaching the peak of hurricane season here in the Atlantic. Peak of the season statistically is about September the 10th. We're at August 15th, so we're getting up that hill where we would expect the season to become more likely. And we could have a couple of storms out in the Atlantic over the next few weeks, but this is really expected to be a below average season because of that wind shear that's out there. It's going to be really hard for any serious storms to develop, which again is great news for us. We'll take it. We've had 3 tropical storms, Arthur, Bertha, and Cristobal. You might have missed Cristobal. It was really there for, I think, 12 or 14 hours. It was a very quick tropical system out in the northern Atlantic, and then it faded away, didn't hit anybody. Next name is Dolly, but again, it looks like it's going to be a while before we see a tropical storm Dolly. Here's the satellite picture right now. Very quiet in the Gulf. High pressures right over us here in Houston. That's keeping us very hot and very dry. That's why there's nothing going on in the Gulf right now. This little guy down here near Puerto Rico, that was one of the waves we were watching last week that we were thinking might become a tropical storm. It just was never able to, and it is still there, but it's getting in all that wind shear now, so it's not going to develop in anything. It is still going to bring some heavy rain down there. Just because it's not a tropical storm doesn't mean it's nothing. It's still a cluster of thunderstorms there over Puerto Rico right now, coming into the Dominican, and of course any cruises out there, they're going to have to reroute around that, even though, again, it does not have a name. It doesn't look like it is going to strengthen. Out in the Pacific, though, I just told you, in El Nino years, it can actually make the Pacific Ocean more active. They've had a very active year there so far. In fact, we have a hurricane as we speak coming into the big island of Hawaii. This is Hurricane Lala, Category 1 storm. Winds are currently 75 miles an hour, gusts up to 90, pressure down to 988 millibars, and this is really getting very close to the Big Island. Now, it looks like it's going to avoid an official landfall on the Big Island. I think the eye is going to go just south of making landfall, but they are getting in a lot of thunderstorm activity and a lot of very high wind gusts all throughout the Big Island of Hawaii right now. Here's the track on this. It is expected, again, to just barely skirt the southern portion of the Big Island, become a tropical storm, and then once it gets out to sea, it could become a hurricane again, maybe a Category 1 by late next week. But of course, by that point, it's going way out in the Pacific and away from any major land. It is breezy out there. These are current wind gusts out on the Big Island. Hilo, 56 mile an hour gusts as of last check. Going up the mountain a little bit on the Big Island, gusts have been a lot higher as the storm is passing by. Again, even though this might not be an official landfall with the eye of the storm hitting land, they're still getting all those outer bands and even part of that eye wall just a little bit there, especially on the southern tip of the island, and a lot of very heavy rain as well. We've had rainfall totals already pretty high. These are your estimates here. You see Ocean View down there on the southern tip of the island, 7, maybe 8 inches. Hilo even getting about 4 inches of rain. Honolulu also expected to get a couple of inches as this storm passes by. So not a direct hit for Hawaii, but they are still getting some pretty serious impacts with that rain and wind right now. For us here in Southeast Texas and anywhere on the Gulf Coast, we are quiet. Hopefully we can keep it that way. We've got a lot of wind shear in the Gulf, high pressures right on top of us. All of that is going to kind of keep us protected from any tropical systems right now. The flip side is, as long as high pressure's around, it's going to keep us very hot and very dry. Again, it's good news because it keeps the storms away, but it is going to increase our temperature. 98 for Sunday, 99 Monday and Tuesday, 100 in Houston Wednesday and Thursday. Notice your rain chances are also very low. We are going to be completely dry through at least Wednesday. And then even by the end of the week, only very slight rain chances. Couple of isolated downpours Thursday, Friday, and next weekend, but we're talking about 10 to 20%. So even then, it seems like any major rain that would cool us down is going to be far away. But at least next week, there could be a couple of isolated downpours by Thursday and Friday. By the way, heat index this week, 105, 110, maybe 115. So I know it is summer. It's Austin in Southeast Texas. It's August, I should say, in Southeast Texas. We are used to the heat, but do want to prepare yourself, still get some water in there and take some breaks in the shade and the AC. Also pretty hot in Austin too, I imagine. All right, that is your KHOU 11 tropical weather update for this Saturday evening. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Keep thinking about Hawaii as they're enduring that storm. Thankfully, not too serious of one, but still going to be a lot of rain and wind for those folks over the next few hours. Our next newscast comes up at 10 p.m. We'll see you right here on KHOU 11+, also on the TV.